Today on Talk Jeju, we're talking about the island's duty-free sector. As always, Todd Thacker joins me in the studio. Good to see you again, Todd. Now, it's hard to believe we're into February and Seollal, the Lunar New Year, is just around the corner.
Yes, that's right. Everyone's gearing up for this 3-day, and if you add in the weekend, it's a 5-day holiday. I think a lot of people are really excited. And we're also seeing a new trend where people from other countries, and especially China actually, are taking advantage of this time off, and they're coming to Jeju.
It certainly does seem like more people take these traditional holidays for travel recently, and Jeju has certainly become a major tourist attraction for Chinese travelers, drawn by its proximity, beauty, visa-free status, and sure, the shopping.
Yeah, the shopping for sure. And in fact, when researching this story, I found a very interesting statistic. Essentially, nationwide, Korea has broken a new world record in duty-free shopping. Essentially, last year, it sold over $2 billion worth of duty-free products in Incheon Airport alone. Now that even surpasses the sort of the European, Middle Eastern consumer hub of Dubai, which sold just shy of $2 billion.
So those are certainly massive numbers. How does Jeju fit into that?
Well, one place is the sort of the extent of the popularity of Jeju-made cosmetics. According to a Forbes Asia report that came out last November, about 2.3 million Chinese tourists came to Jeju between January and September.
Right, and they're contributing to the local economy.
Yeah, exactly. It's estimated that Chinese tourists spend on average about $2,000 while here. That's just for shopping, and of course they're Jeju manufactured cosmetics are extremely popular with them. Amazingly, that figure of $2,000, that's more than they spend on accommodations, food, and entertainment, according to Korea Tourism Organization statistics.
Any other, shall we say, trickle-down effects?
Sure. According to that same report, a number of Korean companies are trying to take advantage of the boom of Chinese tourists.
Yes.
Major retailers like E-Mart and Lotte Mart, they are magnets for the Chinese shoppers, and they even have Chinese translations in the stores now.
And that's certainly a major recent trend. And not surprising though, if we consider the Jeju Tourism Organization stats, and they, according to them, there were some 410,000 Chinese tourists in 2010, and then, as you said, over 2 million last year.
Yes, and as for duty-free shops, they're in our airport, obviously, the seaports in Jeju City and Seogwipo City now. And again, we have to remember that these aircraft and ships, they're bringing in hundreds, sometimes thousands of Chinese tourists per arrival. So, for example, last year, about 590,000 Chinese tourists came here by cruise ship alone.
Now, what are we talking about in terms of the financials? How much are people in general spending, not just the Chinese now, I guess?
Yes, that's right. Well, according to the Korea Customs Service, they've tallied the numbers, and financially, we've seen tourists to Korea, mainland and Jeju, they spend an average of about $1,200. That was last year. In 2008, it was only $150 on average. So duty-free sales are definitely a major driving factor in that. Now, even back in 2012, the numbers were ballooning. Sales at duty-free shops nationwide, again, jumped 130%, and Chinese visitors were spending what they estimated as about double what their Japanese counterparts were spending, about 1.1 million won on average, as opposed to 550,000 won.
Now, I remember a report which had stated that at Jeju's Lotte duty-free shop, about 90% of sales are credited to Chinese shoppers.
Yes, that's right. Now, the numbers for Jeju in 2014 aren't out yet, but if we look back, we saw the major players in the duty-free area, the Shilla and Lotte, they've had bumps of 50 and 60% 2 years ago in 2013. That equates to about 200 billion won and 132 billion won, respectively.
Okay.
And for a little more perspective, up until 2008, local duty-free shops for non-Koreans earned only about 88 billion won in sales per year. Now, that again started to increase, and it exceeded 100 billion won a year later, 2009, and in 2011, it had ballooned all the way up to 210 10 billion won. Now, so I don't think it's unrealistic to expect that last year's figures and, of course, these year's figures are going to be even bigger.
And I assume that these two nations' proximity to Korea is a factor.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that, and again, Korean cosmetics are just so popular with Chinese tourists. They're basically believed to be of high quality, and they're reasonably priced.
Okay, now we've seen a number of calls for changes over the past few years regarding duty-free regulations.
Yes, that's true. Jeju's semi-autonomous status has meant that it's sort of seeking modifications in legislation to basically adapt to this growing market. The province has called for what they call a tourism promotion tax on duty-free shops, something like they've already applied to for the casinos.
And I guess clearly this spike in tourist numbers, has prompted officials to seek out some portion of the revenue that they're spending at these shops and try to get that money, at least some of that money, returned to the province.
No, that's right. And regulatory reform, of course, it's a work in progress. But the numbers do not lie. There's a huge windfall to be had in duty-free.
Now, there was a recent increase in the spending limit for domestic tourists to the island, a duty-free spending limit, and I believe it was a long time in coming.
Yes, the tax-exempt purchase limit is now $600 US per person, and retailers are hoping that that will equate to about a 20% increase in sales in the coming months. Now, the previous $400 ceiling was set, and get this, it was set back in 1996, and obviously it was completely out of sync with today's per capita income. I looked it up, and the Korea Institute of Industrial Economics and Trade said that the $400 ceiling just wasn't in keeping with what is now a per capita income of $26,000 here.
So what was the per capita income in 1996?
Right, around $12,000.
So basically it doubled. Okay, next question. Where are we on the island regarding current duty-free licenses, and what's in store for 2015? Right,
and that's a good question. At the start of the year, essentially we saw that current licenses are up for grabs in March, and Lotte, Shilla, and Buyong, they've all made bids to renew their operating permits.
And of course, we've been reporting that the national government will be giving out one more duty-free license for a shop in downtown Jeju City. The Jeju Tourism Organization and the Jeju Provincial Development Corporation are both reportedly interested in that. Okay, so Todd, we're about out of time here. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, yes, I would. Actually, the term duty-free, it can be a little bit tricky, I think. For example, I think our viewers should keep in mind that though they don't have to pay duties necessarily in the country of origin, let's say Jeju, they may need to declare and pay duties on these purchases once they get back to their home countries. So just sort of keep that in mind.
Good point. Thanks, Todd. See you next week.
My pleasure.
If you have any questions or comments, please email them to talkjeju@kctvjeju.com. Thank you for tuning in today, and I hope you'll join us next week at the same time. If you can't wait until then, though, visit us online at eng.kctvjeju.com or follow us on Facebook. 시청해주신 여러분, 고맙습니다.